Let's work. Turn it down and listen to the experts. Gotta give a shout to the Talking Junk Network. Showing love, hosting battles, playing dope joints. The break room topics always staying on point. Never disappoint. We'll never need a makeover. We here for the takeover like Jehovah. Talking Junk break room takeover on the podcast. Dropping bomb facts on demand like Comcast. Now drop a comment whenever they're going live. Hit the YouTube channel right now and go subscribe. Peace.
Talking Junk Network,
where entertainment lives.
Welcome to Talking Junk.
I'm your host, Jason Melendez.
Live now every week on Friday.
Talking Junk.
A multitude of professionals in different aspects, different walks of life.
You have to come on and talk junk like a normal person.
Welcome to Talking Junk, the podcast that comes to you live every week with another professional here to give you some insight about everyday life, something that maybe you didn't know about. But today you're going to learn all about it. Today we have a great expert with us. She's going to teach us about attachment theory. Yes, attachment theory. That means get up and listen, because there's a lot that's going to pertain to you in this episode, even if you don't know it. And what better way than to get it cracking with author of Canyons and Fireworks and, like I said, attachment theory expert, Rita Bliven. How you doing tonight, Rita?
I am doing great. Thanks so much for having me on the show, and I absolutely love your intro.
Thank you very much. Unfortunately, the intro was supposed to change today. We have a new intro that was produced by a up-and-coming producer in the industry, and he was supposed to be on with you tonight a couple of minutes earlier. So we were supposed to do a double header, but he got pulled into a very important meeting. So that's going to have to get postponed until next week, along with the world premiere of the new intro. But yeah, I mean, I'm super attached to all my works. The beats, I don't do myself. I pay for the beats, but everything else I have a hand in. I have a hand in what goes on the intro, how the intro is made into the video. And these are all my babies and my pride and joy. So it's hard to let one go. But sometimes you got to do it to evolve.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And they're chronicled, right? You can always, it's not like they disappear.
Right.
You know, that just the older episodes have them. So
I have a very bad attachment issue.
We'll get into that.
Yeah, maybe you can give me a little insight on that.
Sure.
Well, how did you even begin to start down your journey of attachment theory?
So my journey starts at the very beginning of my life. I was not a foster child, but my early life mimicked that of a foster child. So my mother and father got divorced when I was a baby, and they lived in California. And my dad was an immigrant from Mexico, and it was the 80s, and he didn't think he would have any custody rights. So he fled to Mexico with me and separated me from my mother. And I lived with him for 2 years and learned Spanish as my first language, bonded with him. And then essentially my mom stole me back and changed my name, and I had to learn English. And so anyone I had ever bonded with as a child, I was dramatically separated from, much like kids in the foster care system. And it just caused a huge attachment issue in myself. And so at a very young age, I was aware of it and, got busy working on it when I was about 13 years old, when I got into counseling. Yep.
So what did you notice about yourself that prompted you to say, there's something wrong here? I get too attached.
So I was the opposite. It's not that I got too attached. It's that I wouldn't allow people to attach to me. So there's 4 basic forms of styles of attachment. One is healthy, and we can get into that later, but then there's unhealthy attachment. And there are basically 3 forms of unhealthy attachment. And did I lose you, Jason?
Nope, I'm here. I don't like to blow my nose on camera. I apologize.
Oh, okay, that's okay. That's okay. I just wanted to make sure. Trust me, I understand. I just wanted to make sure I didn't lose you.
Whenever you see this screen, I'm right here behind the scenes. As long as this screen don't do this.
Okay.
then I'm here.
Perfect. Okay, great. So there's basically 3 forms of unhealthy attachment, and that's where you're too clingy. Simply put, it's a little more technical than that, or you don't allow anyone in. So too clingy is anxious attachment, and not allowing anyone in is avoidant attachment. So I had avoidant attachment, and then there's a third unhealthy attachment style that's called disorganized, which is a combination of the two. And I was a textbook avoidant. So because of what I went through as a child, none of this was conscious. It was all subconscious. I learned that there's not going to be anybody constant in my life. And so I can therefore not depend on anyone. And so I can only depend on myself. And so I pushed people away and feared intimacy, and didn't really have a sense of self because of that. And I suffered from anxiety and depression as a result of not having good, strong attachments. But yeah, those are some of the symptoms of extreme avoidant attachment style.
Now, anxiety and depression, are these common mental and emotional health issues related to unhealthy attachments, or can it spiral into something bigger?
It can certainly spiral into something bigger. So attachment is all about love. So for me, I consciously knew that I was loved, but it was like my love receiver was broken. I had trouble feeling and expressing love. And, the whole foundation of life is love. Pretty much anybody agrees with that. It doesn't matter your religion or your views. Pretty much everybody believes that a child needs to be loved. Anyone who's a parent believes that. And
1,000%.
1,000%. So
even the worst, brattiest kid you want to put in the
Yes.
corner for 3 years.
Exactly. They are still worthy of love. And
They
I was loved, but I could not receive it. I could not always feel it. And so because I couldn't feel or receive love, it was like being unloved. And then that resulted in depression and anxiety and other things. But it was really an attachment issue all along.
Now, growing up in the day that we grew up in the 80s and the 90s, it's easier to kind of self-reflect because you don't have everybody cramming diagnosis down your throat.
Right.
Nowadays, they probably would have branded you with Asperger's.
I don't know. I think they would have definitely diagnosed me with depression and anxiety. And
well, not being able to feel the love or the social cues that you're getting love.
So I don't think so, because people with avoidant, or at least me, I don't know if it's all people with avoidant attachment. I was very good with social cues.
Okay.
Very, very good with social cues, because again, deep down inside of me, I felt like there's nobody here to take care of me. I have to survive. I have to make it on my own. Well, what's one way a child makes it on their own? Is by responding to social cues and responding appropriately. So I always evoked love. People loved me a lot because I was very responsive and I said the right things and I did the right things. I was the one who had trouble feeling and receiving love. Does that make a little bit more sense?
It does. It does. Now, how did this affect you when you started dating?
It's real big on dating. So most people do not give a crap about attachment until they start dating. And then, of course, if you are caring for a child that's been in the foster care system or adopted or has had a trauma like I did, that's, usually in parenting and dating is when the average person cares about attachment. And it was just abundantly clear to me that I feared intimacy. Now, I don't necessarily mean physical intimacy. I more so mean emotional intimacy. And that's really strange in the dating pool. Pop culture says that that's the guy's role, and that women are just all ready to be, emotional companions to the people they're dating. So I would say that it made me kind of mysterious to the guys that I dated. And so I didn't have a problem dating. I had a problem taking relationships to the next level and getting
Connecting.
connecting and getting serious and being vulnerable and getting to truly know somebody and truly letting somebody in to know me and to see my weaknesses as well as my strengths. Those sort of things didn't happen. So in the early years of, teen and early 20s, a lot of people aren't going deep. A lot of people are, playing the field or whatever. It was when I got older in my 20s, later in my 20s, that I started to say, well, this is really a problem. Everyone else is maturing and getting married and having deeper relationships and even starting to have kids. And here I am still dating just like I did when I was 16. And so that was
There are people our age that are still doing that.
exactly. And it's probably an attachment issue. I mean, not to oversimplify it, but it very well could be an attachment issue, I should say. If you do not long for companionship, if you truly are a free spirit and truly are not interested in a more serious relationship, then it might just be your personality. But if there's a part of you that is longing for something deeper, but even in your 30s and even in your 40s can't seem to break those old patterns,
Then there's something deeper.
There's something deeper. Yep. 100%. Yeah.
Now, how can this kind of alter your life's purpose? The thing that you see yourself doing in life, can it kind of hinder that process?
Absolutely. So I like to say that, and I know not everyone that makes love is in love, but generally speaking, humans are formed with love making. Okay. How much more is the development of a person developed from a foundation of love? So this isn't just about relationships with others. It's also about a relationship with yourself. So attachment theory says that a child between 6 months and 3 years old, has to develop a lasting bond with at least one primary caregiver. And that caregiver needs to be consistent, loving, and responsive. And from that foundation of love, the child can start to develop as a person. We call it the terrible twos when a kid, acts out and starts to say no and starts to be rebellious. That's actually a very healthy developmental stage that happens when a child has a strong foundation of love.
And people don't talk about that. Terrible twos happen again when they're teenagers.
Yeah, it happens again. And again, it's healthy because again, the child who is a person is developing into less of a kid and more into a teen. And they need that strong foundation of love that's going to love them unconditionally when they get the attitude, when they have the bad moment, when they make a big mistake that they've never made before. And if you don't have that strong foundation of love, you don't go through those developmental stages appropriately. And so then you as a person doesn't fully develop either.
Okay. Now, what are some steps that you can take to try to alleviate the attachment theory?
So it's a little different depending on what type of attachment style that you have. So I do just want to back up a little bit. Even in the healthy range, even in the healthy attachment range, you either tilt avoidant or tilt anxious. So even in the healthy range, everybody's a little bit one or the other. And we all do. We've all been clingy at one point. We've all been avoidant at one point. But generally speaking, you tilt one way or the other. So don't think if you hear some of the symptoms that, oh my gosh, I have an unhealthy attachment style. It's when it starts to affect your life and make you unhappy and you don't have control over it. When you say, I know I shouldn't be clingy and this person is, I'm suffocating this person that I love and I care about because I'm so clingy and I can't control it. Well, then that's, unhealthy, anxious attachment. Or when you love somebody and you want to move the relationship further, and then you find yourself breaking up with the person because you feel uncomfortable, even though you know it's a wrong decision. That's probably avoidant attachment versus just, hey, I'm feeling a little suffocated. I might need a break today. Or, hey, I'm feeling a little lonely. I kind of need some reassurance from you today. There's a difference between the healthy and the unhealthy. But anyway.
Now, it could, as long as we're backtracking, I know it could be a confusing thing, but how do you determine if your attachment is healthy and unhealthy?
Again, is it affecting your life in a negative way? So if you are, let's just pick anxious, because anxious is the one that is depicted in pop culture more often and people are more familiar with. So anxious attachment is a fear that you're going to be abandoned. Pretty much always that the people you love are going to abandon you. And there's a desire to get your needs met by others. And so people with anxious attachment are anxious in relationships. They need more reassurance. They need you to text them right back when you text them. They need to hear I love you more often. They need, they might have suspicions that you're cheating on them for no reason and need more reassurance. Well, you probably know a dozen people that fit that category right now on the top of your head. But there's the person that, will send a text and be like, why didn't you text me right back, and get a little irritated? And then there's the person that says, you didn't text me and I don't care that you're at work. I'm driving to your work and I'm about to make a scene at your work and check on you because I am so unsettled that you didn't text me back. Do you see the difference between healthy and unhealthy? One
I
is
do.
a slight irritation, affects your behavior somewhat, but doesn't affect your life in a negative way. And it's the same with avoidance. So all of us have at one point or another said, I'm feeling a little suffocated in this relationship. I could use a little break and, create that break one way or another. Versus the person that, we're engaged, you did nothing wrong, I'm calling this engagement off. I'm going to lose myself in this marriage. There's no way I can marry you. We've already sent out the invitations and, ordered everything for the wedding, but I'm breaking it off just because I feel like I'm going to be suffocated in this relationship. You kind of see the difference,
It kind of sounds like impulse control.
And a lot of it is impulse control. A lot of it has to do with self-soothing. And one of the big things that helped me, so that was a great segue, is meditation. So with anxious attachment, usually people are very aware of their feelings and they're desperate to get their feelings met, their needs met. Avoidant is kind of the opposite. They push their feelings aside because they're kind of in survival mode in a way that says, I can't deal with feelings. I can't deal with love. I can't deal with intimacy. Usually avoidants are workaholics and very successful and kind of lone wolves that seem like they don't need anybody. That is a lie. We all need people. We all do. Even if you're an introvert, you need some people. And so meditation can help you self-soothe if you're extremely anxious and not react inappropriately whenever you're feeling threatened. And the avoidant can get in touch with their feelings and actually react when they don't want to react. So, intimacy is an action. You do have to open up. You do have to be vulnerable. The avoidant has no problem pushing all of that to the side and going, to work on Saturday and saying, I don't have time for this relationship. I have to go work. But meditation helps someone with avoidant attachment center themselves and really feel what they're feeling. I feel afraid, but what I really am feeling is love. And I just need to get past that fear of losing myself in this relationship or being suffocated or being controlled. So it's self-soothing, but in meditation and things of that nature, but with different approaches, if that makes sense.
No, it makes perfect sense. So it almost sounds like step one would be to diagnose whether you're the good kind of attachment or the bad kind of attachment and see where your impulse control lies, and then to try to control that with some form of meditation or self-soothing.
Absolutely. And of course, counseling, if you find yourself, in the unhealthy camp, I'm a big advocate for counseling. I was in professional counseling. It helped me tremendously. The other thing is also to evaluate the connections that you do have. So everyone, I don't care who you are, you have connections. Even if you're not married, even if you're not dating anybody, you have some sort of connections. And you can start by also working to make your current connections healthier and more productive and more vulnerable, and exercise some impulse control and all of that stuff in the relationships you already have. That's a big step. in getting all of this under control.
So once you've established a medium with yourself and you know where to go from there, after you've already learned how to kind of woo-saw and self-soothe yourself and then try to get those connections back intact, what then do you do?
So it's funny because, you know, the healthier your attachments are, the healthier your future attachments will be. So it's kind of hard at first when you realize, oh my goodness, I have an unhealthy attachment style. And oh my goodness, most of my relationships are unhealthy. It's a little overwhelming. And it's easy to want to just run away from all of that and start over, but that's not the right medicine. You've got to get yourself in a healthier place, and you've got to get your existing relationships in a healthier place. And if it's impossible to get your existing relationships in a healthy place, then you might need to cut some people off. But once you move past that and you
A lot of people think that that's a bad thing. It's not necessarily a bad thing. Sometimes
No.
your lives don't align with each other, and
Yeah.
going your separate ways are what's best for both parties.
Yeah. And I will say a lot of times extreme avoidance and extreme anxious attachment people connect. And this is not a good combo because the avoidant deep down inside wants love and connection, but they put up all these excessive boundaries. And the anxious pushes past everybody's boundaries and sort of makes the person love them. And at first, that's helpful and refreshing to both parties. This person, went past my boundaries that nobody else has ever been able to get past. And this person didn't care that I pushed back past the boundaries. And at first, it seems very refreshing. But then as time goes on, it pushes each person further into their dysfunction. And so if you're
The
dealing with
definition of toxic.
Yes, the definition of toxic. So if you're dealing with one of those situations, you may need to evaluate the relationship and call it quits, especially if you're working on improving your attachment style. Because if you just have that extreme scenario, it's not helping anybody.
And this
So that's
isn't just for intimate relationships. It's about
no friendships.
personal, professional, any
Yeah.
type of relationship.
Any type of relationship that affects your life. Of course, if there's an acquaintance that you don't really, spend much time with, you don't need to evaluate, every person you see at the grocery store. You don't need to do that. It's the relationships that you invest time in and that they invest time in you, and their actions affect your life and your actions affect their lives.
Now,
So
how do you kind of, I know there's somebody out there right now that's probably thinking the same thing, but how do you take that approach with a relationship that you have no other choice but to be in front of? Say a kid. You're the sole parent. You have to raise your child the right way,
Mhm.
but they're your triggers.
So it is a little different in parenting. So, in adult relationships, whether you're coworkers or biological family, it's two adults who are both accountable for their own actions. So there's a standard that you need to develop. There's a standard that you need to hold. With children, it's completely different. You can't look to your children to meet your needs. You can't look to your children to heal your issues. Now, as a byproduct, they might accidentally heal your issues, help you heal your issues, but you can't look to them to do that. So with children, you have to get your act together. You cannot expect the children to get their act together. You've got to get your foundation of love secure. And it's especially difficult if you're dealing with a child that's dealt with some of the traumas that cause attachment issues. If you have attachment issues yourself, you're absolutely right. It's like one trigger after another, but the parent has to get it together. The kid may get it together in adulthood and they may get it together under your care, but you cannot expect them to have a stand. You have to get it together as the parent. And I know that's hard for a lot of people, but as the adult, you're the responsible party. The child is in your care. And so if you're a single parent and you're triggering your child and your child is triggering you, I do recommend that you get some professional help. And I do recommend that you focus on getting yourself in a healthy place of secure love. And then it's really about behavior modification on steroids. When we're dealing with our own growth, it's a lot of behavior modification. But when we're dealing with our own growth and there's a child that triggers us, you have to amp it up, man. You've got to be a warrior for behavior modification and self. You got to use the tools like no other. And I hate that for single parents. I really do, but that's the reality of the situation.
I mean, it's the reality for parents that households that have two parents also.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Yeah. And there are marriages that have, there's a lot of love there and they've decided to stay together, probably for good reason, but that doesn't change the fact that you still trigger each other. And so there has to be individual accountability and then group accountability. And you really have to be on the same page to work through it all. And there are ups and downs. I mean, you can have 6 months of nothing but growth. And then a series of events or a trigger or something can make you feel like you take, 10 steps back. But that's part of the healing journey. That's definitely part of the healing journey. I said once, everything else in life, the harder you work and the harder you are on yourself, the more likely you are to have success. Inner healing is the exact opposite. You have to be very kind and patient and gentle with yourself. You can't be harsh with yourself with inner healing. You have to, for every step back, you have to give yourself grace and mercy.
I couldn't have said it better myself. Now, you have a book coming out, Canyons and Fireworks.
Yes.
Now, does this pertain to attachment theory?
Yes, it's all about my story. So like I said, my early life mimicked that of a foster child. And so I was a pretty extreme case of avoidant attachment. Now, back in the 90s, they called it avoidant attachment disorder. Nowadays, they don't use the term disorder. They call it extreme avoidant attachment.
Yeah, because once you say disorder,
it's like
people get freaked out.
Yeah. But I will say that I like the fact, well, I shouldn't say I like it. It's interesting to me that the word disorder is sometimes appropriate. So, for example, if you read the description of avoidant attachment, it sounds like an extreme introvert. Okay. Well, I am actually pretty extroverted now that I've walked through a lot of healing. And it was the avoidant attachment issue that disordered me from my true state. And so
now it doesn't even say an adult. I'm sorry to cut you off. I pulled it up for you, but it doesn't even say adult or persons. It starts with a child. An attachment style a child develops when their parent or main caretaker doesn't show care or responsiveness past providing essentials like food and shelter. The child disregards their own struggles and needs in order to maintain peace and keep their caregiver close by.
Yes. Yeah. And in my case, it wasn't that either one of my parents weren't good caregivers. It's that I was separated from them dramatically. So it communicated that to my little child brain. It communicated to my little child brain, they might not be here tomorrow. So extreme separation. I know when you read this, it sounds like, well, these are just crappy parents. But there are all sorts of scenarios that can create that. In my case, I was physically separated from my parents. You could have a parent that gets cancer and is, going through their health journey and is in a sense separated from their children. You could get a parent that passes away and then there's a crisis in the family and the child doesn't get enough attention for a short period of time. During that developmental stage, it's crucial. And so it could be no fault of the parent whatsoever. They could be great parents, but circumstances could cause the child to feel as though the caregiver is not responsive, attentive, loving, and consistent.
Now, it almost sounds like some of those cliche stories you see on sitcom television or maybe a movie or two, but it almost, you know what, a good example would probably be Precious. So it almost sounds like a child whose parent has sickness and they're almost forced into the role of the parent to take care of their parent.
Yes. Yep. And yep, you hit the nail on the head. So again, the child that develops an unhealthy attachment style usually does not have the normal upbringing. Now, nowadays, there's no such thing as normal. There's just no such thing.
There never was a such thing as normal.
There never was such thing as a normal. But I will say, in decades past, pretty much the population agreed that the best thing is two loving parents that are there and consistent. Even if that wasn't normal, it was pretty much the consensus that that is the best scenario.
It was the rule.
Yes. Nowadays, we don't even believe that. Not as a society, we don't even fully believe that. We say, well, a mom can go to a sperm bank and have a child and she doesn't need a husband or a dad for her child or whatever the case may be. But anyway, the norm, I shouldn't say the norm, the most ideal situation is two loving parents that are consistent, loving, and responsive. Because even in a great environment, they're going to fail sometimes. They're going to have a bad day. They're going to overreact. And kids are very sensitive. And so if you have two, then when one has a bad day, the other one can take over. And so that just lightens the load. Very few of us had that idyllic scenario. Very few of us can say, my parents never got divorced. My biological parents stayed together and it was a loving environment my entire life. And I feel nothing but love, peace, and joy from both of my parents. Very few of us can say that. So there is new research out that says nowadays 2/3 of adults living in the West have some sort of attachment issue. And it's because of things like widespread divorce, widespread untreated mental issues, the breakdown of the nuclear family. We can go on and on and on. Cultural, societal norms have changed. So my story is dramatic, but there are lots of people suffering from some sort of attachment issue that's not quite as dramatic. It might not be a full-blown disorder, but it's, some sort of issue, that prohibits them from living the life they want to live. It's not about us saying, well, you should get married and you should have 2.5 kids and you should take care of your parents and you should have these, 7 best friends. It's not about that. It's what is the life that you want to live and are you living it? And if you're not, why? Why aren't you living it? Maybe it's not an attachment issue. Maybe it's, extreme anxiety that has nothing to do with attachment issues. But there's new research out there that says there's a very good chance that somewhere along the line it has something to do with attachment.
Now, before we close out, I got to ask a couple of questions.
Okay.
You said 2.5 kids. Is that why you have so many crosses on that wall? Is it because that 0.5, the other 0.5 is a demon? Because I have one of those too. She's half demon.
How many kids do you have?
I got 3 little girls.
Oh, you have 3 girls. Oh, how old are they?
My oldest is 14. My middle child is 8, and my youngest is 7.
Okay, so you're past the terrible twos. Now you're going into the
I'm in the terrible teens now.
The terrible teens. Now I totally understand. So I hit the absolute lottery when I got married, and I got the best stepdaughter angel of the world. And I know that sounds cheesy, but I'm not even kidding. She's the best. No, we have that's all the children I have. But yeah, I just like crosses. I like crosses. That's why they're out there.
Now, you answered my second question because America. It's a cliche, but they love happy endings.
Yes.
And I wanted to see if you got your happy ending, if you were able to overcome your attachment theory.
I absolutely did, but I was 37 when I got married. And I'm totally cool with that.
You got married last year?
Oh, aren't you sweet? No. We're getting ready to celebrate our 4th anniversary.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And I will say you can heal entirely from all your attachment issues and still never get married if that's not, the marriage is not the finish line. Marriage is not the trophy you get. Oh, wow, you've healed your attachment issues. It just so happens that I got to marry the love of my life and the most amazing man ever, and got to become a stepmom. But it's really about, are you happy? Are you happy with the life that you get to live? And if you're not, you might need to do some inner healing. And if you are, more power to you, you know?
Now, there's no roadmap for this.
Exactly.
There's no essential step-by-step guide that's gonna give you the outcome you're looking for. Everybody's experience is different. Everybody's journey is different. So everybody's outcome is gonna be different.
A little
So
different, yeah.
maybe your ending point would be somebody's starting point.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I've seen, stories of, people that were my age, and their heart opened up and they adopted 10 children, because they had this big heart journey, and then they wanted to adopt all these kids. And, that's probably not the way my, healing journey is going to end. It might, who knows? But as of right now, it's not looking that way. So no, that's a very, very good point, is that it is different for everybody, but we all need love. And if you say, well, I'm a loner and I don't really need that much love, no,
You're lying to yourself.
we all need love. Or if you say, I have umpteen BFFs and I am, have somebody to hang out with every day of the week, but none of those relationships are deep, then
There's such thing as fake love.
Yeah, there might be,
or conditional love.
Or conditional love. Yes. You want to be able to rightly have some relationships that are deep and full of unconditional love and are long lasting. Even if it's not a lot, it could just be a few, but you need to be able to have the ability to love in that way.
Now, would you agree that attachment theory is kind of like being an addict? Once you're in recovery for the rest of your life?
I do think so, because again, it's really disrupted by trauma. So as a child, I had the trauma of extreme separations, and I think I gave the example one time. If I all of a sudden got pregnant with triplets, I probably would be separated from my life as I know it, probably until at least the kids were in kindergarten. I probably wouldn't have time for all of the connections that give me a feeling of belonging and support and enrich my life. Even though, having triplets is a blessing from God. Thank God for, for triplets. For me, it would be an extreme separation. It would be a trauma that might trigger some of that past stuff that happened to me, or it might not. It might, I might just be able to redirect my attachment to the triplets. I know that's kind of an extreme example, but sometimes people walk through attachment healing and then they have a very unexpected early death of a loved one, a key figure in their life, or maybe postpartum depression keeps them isolated for an extended period of time. There's all sorts of things that can happen that can cause you to digress.
Setbacks are always expected.
Setbacks are always expected. And so it's a lifelong journey. And that's really the silver lining for me, is that even though it's a lifelong journey, and I doubt I will ever be able to say, I'm an expert, I'm recovered, I'm still learning about all of this. I will say the thing that is the biggest gift is that I am constantly thinking about connection and attachment. I am less wrapped up in materialism. I'm less wrapped up in anger. I'm less wrapped up in some of those things that don't matter. I'm more focused on relationships and love, because those are the things that matter the most. And so if you can keep that mindset, you'll probably have less setbacks, but setbacks happen. You have to just embrace it all and just move forward when you realize something has taken you back a little bit.
Beautifully said. Now, before we close out, why don't you give the audience there your mission statement, where they can find you, when your book's coming out, and when you're done, just tell them thank you for tuning in to Talking Junk.
Thank you so much, Jason. You were so easy to talk to, and I can't wait to see your new intro. So yes, I've written a book, Canyons and Fireworks. It is in the editing process and will hopefully be available later this year, 2024. You can find me at canyonsandfireworks.com, and that website has a link to everything: my blog, my Facebook, my Instagram. And anybody who's an author knows that you just want to get your social media presence up there so that your book could possibly have a good launch. So I appreciate all the follows, likes, comments. That helps people like me out a lot. And I love the show. I'm new to the show, but now I'm going to start following you, Jason. And it's been really fun talking junk with you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Don't go nowhere.
Okay.
There you have it, everybody. Again, another wonderful guest for another wonderful week. We'll have another guest for you next week, but there's a lot that you need to take in from this episode. And the biggest thing you need to take in is that where there is love, there is life. So no matter what you're going through, no matter what type of attachment issues you have, love is there to shine and will help you through everything. Peace out. Love you.
Thank you.